Hello everybody, my name is Dr. Bhasha Mukherjee and welcome to my channel. If you're new to this channel, I'm an NHS junior doctor. I'm currently in foundation year 2 in the process of going into GP training, and I'm also a model and former Miss England, and on here we talk about pretty much everything. Anyway, today we're talking about the multi-specialty recruitment assessment, or the MSRA exam. In the UK, after you've done medical school at university, where you go to straight after school / college, essentially after you've done your A-levels, so you can probably go into uni at the age of 18, and then you have 5 years, for some people it's 6 years, at university and medical school. And straight from there, you are pretty much, there's only one route for you to go to as a qualified doctor. You have to go into something called a foundation training, where it's 2 years of different specialties, working in hospitals and community, and they're usually about 4-month-long placements across 2 years essentially that you have to do this. And you have small assessments of your competencies and stuff like that, and you get teaching for the whole time as well. So those are your foundation 1 and foundation year 2 as a new junior doctor. Obviously, in other parts of the world, if you want to go into a specialty, some people go straight into the specialty straight out of medical school. We don't have that here. So we actually have to apply for specialty training separately. And a lot of specialties require separate exams and entrance criteria, etc. So the MSRA is required by multiple different specialties, and some of these specialties only require to do an MSRA exam and maybe an interview. Some don't even require an interview, like for example, because of COVID, GP training does not require interviews presently. And there are other specialties that require more portfolio building and other assessments. But anyway, generally speaking, the MSRA kind of covers quite a few different specialties. Generally speaking, people tend to do it in their foundation year 2. Foundation year 1 is just usually a time when a lot of people are just finding their feet and getting used to the job and trying to figure out what area they want to even go into. So I wanted to apply for specialty training in GP, and for me the route was to do the MSRA. Apart from this, the MSRA is also required by certain other specialties. I'm just going to read them off my list here. So psychiatry, radiology, ophthalmology, obs and gynae, and sexual health, community sexual health. So for the longest time I was actually conflicted between psychiatry and GP. So in a way, I'd say if you're someone who's in that position, I would do this exam and probably apply for both. And actually you can do this exam and apply for multiple different specialties all at the same time. Some people actually even do the MSRA and other specialty exams for other specialties like medicine, surgery, etc. So again, it's totally an individual basis thing. For me, this was my route because I wanted to do GP training. So I put in my application on 4th of November. And after that, I was getting really quite frustrated because we weren't getting our dates for the exam. The exam dates were not opening up for ages, but there was some indication that it would be in the first 2 weeks of January. Now, I don't know if I'd heard this somewhere, but I thought we had a longer period of time to sort of choose our exam dates between, but apparently not. It is just 2 weeks and you have to choose an exam date within that 2-week period. So that was a bit annoying, and I feel like I found that information out pretty late. And also I feel like the date for the exams were probably released really close to the exams as well, probably just a month beforehand. And as soon as I had sort of booked in my place, ironically I'd forgotten to look at my junk mail and check my emails properly and check my Oriel for updates, and I didn't know that the dates had been announced, and the application for booking your test was available. So I booked it about 3 weeks before the actual exam. And then thankfully for me, although this may not be an option for many people, I was able to take at least a couple of days of study leave Also, my exam revision period was actually over Christmas time, so there was the Christmas bank holidays as well, where I could really hone down on my revision. And then my exam was, I picked the very last date that I could possibly do, which was 15th of January. It was a Saturday. A lot of places don't offer Saturdays, so you'll have to check if you even have that availability. So I had 15th of January as my exam date, and it was early in the morning at 8 a.m. I would probably liken the MSRA most to a finals exam, medical school finals exam for UK candidates, essentially. At least it was my experience from the uni I went to and the finals exam we had. The exam is split sort of 50-50 between professional dilemmas, which are basically your SJT-like questions, if any of you have had any experience with SJT, and the other 50% I would say is your clinical scenarios and clinical problems, and they sort of encompass everything that you would have learned by final year of medical school, so all your subspecialties, and you know, medicine, surgery, orthopedic, all that stuff essentially. So it's really, really broad. Now, if you're going into GP training, I would really recommend getting the GP training guide, application guide essentially. If you just type in MSRA guide or GP application guide, there is a PDF on Google, which is so useful. It is from the health education website essentially. There is a rule according to the guide that if you score below a certain level in either one category, then your application is nullified, and it doesn't matter how well you do in the other category. If either there is like a certain level that you have to hit for both. Now, the scores I find are quite arbitrary. It's based on how difficult the questions were that year, how everybody in the year did, everybody across the country, how they performed. To help you understand it, the scoring system is sort of split across bands. So you could be anywhere from a band 1 to a band 4. Band 1 means that you did not do well enough, and that means a direct fail. And if you scored band 1 in either professional dilemmas or clinical problem, then you basically failed the exam. And band 4 is basically the top 25 to 30% of people who don't have to do an interview. And luckily for me, this year we don't even have any interviews at all. So for my application, I just needed to pass the exam, and that would have been enough for me to enjoy the job. But I wanted to apply in London, and for that reason I was quite under pressure to try and get a good enough band, or at least a good ranking, so I would get my preference in London, because London is so competitive. The first part of the exam is your professional dilemmas, which is your SJT questions, and essentially you get 95 minutes for the first part, and then you get a 5-minute break, which you may or may not take, it's up to you, and then you get 75 minutes to complete the clinical problems bit. The exams are held at a Pearson View Centre. So if you guys have done your theory test for your driving test, or your UK CAT or something, you'd know where to go pretty much, because it's the same place. If there are no spaces available at your most local Pearson View Centre, you can actually try and find another centre which is offering date. So I was told that you only need 2 weeks before the exam to really revise. And I feel like when I started revising, I was like, damn, why didn't I start earlier? But at the end of the period, I probably revised for a total of 3.5 weeks, roughly 3 weeks, yeah, ish, or just over, maybe like just three and a half weeks or something like that. And I was sort of a bit gutted that I wish I'd started earlier, because there's so much I'd forgotten, things that I had revised for when I was in medical school, and I'd completely forgotten all of it. And when you're going into it, you feel like, oh my god, I don't know anything, how am I ever going to do well in this exam? And my scores were really low. But actually, by the end of that period, do I think I could have crammed in more if I had sort of had longer to revise? I would argue no, because I found that the things and topics that I'd revised at the beginning of the 3-week period, I was forgetting them by the end, so I had to refresh my memory. So had I started earlier, I would have had to refresh my memory anyway. But yes, maybe my basic knowledge would have been a bit better, but I think that sort of like the growth would have been less. But it's entirely up to you how long you really dedicate to studying for this exam. But I'd say I probably spent about 3 weeks, roughly about 3 weeks revising for this exam. What I decided to do was go for Passmed. I'd never used Passmed before. All through medical school, I'd never used Passmed, and honestly, I was like, can't believe I went all my life, like 5 years of medical school, not trying something that is not even that expensive and actually is really, really effective. There is also Emidica, which was recommended to me, and I was told that Emidica is more reflective of what the exam is like, and actually Emidica is a lot easier than Passmed. I don't really know the difference because I never tried Emidica. A lot of people did try Emidica, and to be honest, they also got a place, so it's entirely up to you. But the only thing is, Emidica is like a lot more expensive, and to be honest, I wasn't really willing to spend that money, so I went with Passmed. And also because Passmed is something I'd known of before. The guy that runs Emidica actually has some really good content on YouTube, and I would definitely watch questions and answers and that kind of stuff on YouTube as well. And that's another thing I wanted to mention, that I really rinsed YouTube to try to refresh my memory on all the content that I had forgotten since finals. And if anything, I would say, just if you have your notes from your finals, dig them out. Any books or any question papers you have from your finals, dig them out, because I find finals materials was all I really needed. In fact, I used a finals revision guide to revise from. It's right here. This is like such a good revision guide. And fun fact, this was sort of curated, written by one of the F1s that was working in my firm, in my team, in surgery at the job that I was doing. So I was her SHO, and I just couldn't be prouder that my F1 wrote this book. And actually this book was so helpful for me. Make sure you give her a follow on Instagram as well. So shout out to Becky. Such a useful book. It's got some really visual notes, really easy to follow, really easy to revise off. And of course, as I said, I used YouTube. I looked at lots of lectures. I would drive to work and play lectures of different topics and different question answers, basic Q&As, basically. Any Q&As, that kind of stuff. Exam Q&As, practice on YouTube. So that even whilst I was driving, I was absorbing information. And of course, Passmed was so good, so helpful, and I really tried to utilize all the resources that they had. I tried to finish all the question bank, and in the very last week and the very last day, I probably did timed question papers. Within the last week/day, I did timed question papers, and it was really helpful. One of the best things about Passmed is that it really highlights what areas you need to work on and improve. So that's something that I found really helpful, because then I could go back and study those areas. And in my revision booklets as well, I sort of labelled and put, little sticky notes in the pages that I felt least confident in, the topics and algorithms and memory cues, etc., that I felt least confident. In terms of the professional dilemma questions, I actually started off doing really well on them on Passmed, and I exhausted the question resources really quite quickly, which I probably shouldn't have done, but I did go back to it and sort of work through the questions that I'd got stuck on. I think it gave me a false sense of what the exam would be like, because the questions on Passmed were a lot more sensible ones than what actually came up in the exam. There were some bizarre examples of scenarios that I was just like, what the hell? So strange. Like, your reg lobs the chair at your SHO. What do you do? Like, when will that ever happen? I have never experienced that. So bizarre. That was one of the questions. It was so strange. I still, to this day, don't know what the answer to that question is. I mean, one of the options was go after your reg to check if they're okay. or go and check if the patients in the next room are okay. I don't know what the answer to that question is. I don't know. And apparently one of my colleagues from uni got 10%, top 10% in the professional dilemmas, and I was like, what? Those questions were so weird. So we were told to arrive 15 minutes early. At my Pearson View Centre, there's no nearby parking, so I was dropped off by my mum. I tried to hydrate myself, and I would say hydrate, because you can't take your water in with you. But at the same time, I ended up going for a pee like 3 times before my exam and once during. So I think I was nervous peeing even. The only thing that you're allowed to take in with you is your ID. I don't know if you can take a pen in actually, but I take one in with you just in case. But you can't take your notes in with you. You cannot even take a water bottle in with you. They give you earmuffs and little, earplugs. I would take it and put it in because you don't want to be in the situation where you can't, someone else is making chair noises and you get disturbed. But yeah, so I walked in, they asked for my ID, registered me, and then showed me my locker and asked me to put everything away. I actually took a stash of notes with me to revise off, but I was so nervous. I was like, I'm not going to look at it anymore because I don't even know what's even going to go in. And I had this rush of a feeling just before I went in that, crap, I don't know anything. Oh my God, I've forgotten everything. You know what I mean? And I was trying to remember and recall what I should be remembering, what I need to remember. And all of a sudden it was all gone from my head. I don't know where it went. Yeah, it was a really strange feeling. But yeah, I hydrated. I think I also had a bit of a snack before I went in. My go-to snack before exams has always been bananas. I remember before my UK CAT, I had 3 bananas before my exam. But it's entirely up to you because I feel like I was so nervous. I had acid reflux during the exam, and I really felt an urge to go to the toilet for a number 2 during my exam. And I really needed to fart as well. It was so weird. It's like all my bowels were, I don't know if you ever had this, but when you're really nervous, you feel nauseous or you really feel like you need to go for a poo. That's how it felt like I was having my bowels were twisting and turning with all the nervousness. But anyway, so I hydrated myself, took my ID in, sat on my chair, started the exam. I was more worried about the clinical problems because I knew we had less time, and I'd done a couple of timed question papers and I had just about finished on time, and in the end a couple of times I'd had to just click some random ones, and I would say make sure you answer every question. It doesn't matter if you know the answer to it. If you're running out of time, just make sure you click something, because you never know, you might still click on the right answer. You've got 1 in 4 chance of getting it right essentially. So I had quite a bit of time left over after my professional dilemmas section, because it is quite a long exam, and I felt like, bruh, I don't know. And I went back to some of these questions that I got stuck on, and I ended up changing the entire order, and I don't even know if I should advise you guys to stick to your first instinct or go back and review it after, because I did that in so many of the questions, and maybe that's what pulled my marks down in that one. Who knows? Now, what I didn't realise was that 5-minute break, it doesn't just automatically sort of tell you or give you a warning. You have to click onto doing the exam, and if you don't, it starts taking minutes away from the exam automatically. I didn't realise this because I went to the toilet, came back to my seat, sat down, and it said 1 minute left. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to wait for this 1 minute to be over and then press OK. And as 1 minute finished, it said 1 minute left again. So I was like, wait, what? And then I understood, and I was like, hold on, why is it not just automatically going to the exam paper? And I realised I have to press OK and enter to actually enter the exam, otherwise it just keeps taking minutes away. So be very mindful of that. Thankfully, I panicked because I thought, oh my gosh, this is the portion of the exam that I can't afford to lose time on, which is the clinical problems bit, and this is the portion of the exam that I've lost 2 minutes already. But thankfully, I found that the writing of how much text there is for the question was significantly lower than what I had experienced on Passmed. It was the histories were maybe 2 lines long, 3 lines max, really quite simple. And I probably got stuck on a couple of exam questions. Most of them I felt, yeah, I think I kind of can work it out. So I was almost really impressed with my knowledge recall. I felt most underconfident about that part of the exam, and actually came out and felt more confident about how I'd done in the clinical problems section. And I think that's because it's a right or wrong thing rather than forming your own judgment. You know, there are certain questions, certain things that you just know the answer to, so it's just easier that way. So yes, I finished early on the exam, probably about 10 minutes left at the end, which was quite nice. I sat the 10 minutes out just in case I needed to go back and look at anything. And yeah, I finished the exam and then left and came home. I found out my exam results roughly 1 month after the exam, and what my score was 547. 547 put me in band 3, and I was 3 points off getting into band 4, basically top 25 to 30%. And what my individual scores were: in professional dilemmas I got 267, and in the clinical bit I had got 280, which both of them put me in band 3, so you know, it was fine. But as I said, I did better on my clinical problems bit. So as I explained earlier, band 1 means you've not passed, band 4 means you're in top 25 to 30%, and you get straight pass. But for me, it wouldn't have mattered, because the perks of being in band 1, but band 4 wouldn't have applied because we have no interviews this year anyway. And on top of that, the only reason I wanted to get a high enough score was so I can get a London job. And thankfully I ranked my jobs and I actually got the job that I wanted, so I'm really glad about that. I found out about all of that in subsequent weeks to months after my results, after the applications. Final application was mid-March, and then we got our allocation throughout April, and now I've got my job, so good news for me. So that was my little review on the MSRA. But if you have any other questions in particular that you want answered about the MSRA, GP training, or even foundation training, make sure you pop a comment down below. See you all later. Thank you for watching. Mwah.